So SEC Media Days in full swing over in Dallas, Texas, really the official kickoff to the college football season. Tennessee taking the podium the other day, just kind of initial reactions from all of the questions that Josh Heupel expectedly got bombarded with, of course, with him returning to Oklahoma for the first time since he left the coaching job there, went to UCF, and then obviously now here at Tennessee. He called the return unique. He obviously has a lot of friends and former teammates on the coaching staff still. What do you think he's telling us about it being unique, other than just being on the other sideline, about his first return to Oklahoma?
I'll say this. When I had a conversation with Josh Heupel about that earlier at the SEC spring meetings, I said, when's the last time you've been to Norman? He said, about a decade. That tells me he hasn't been to Norman since he was fired as the offensive coordinator by Bob Stoops. He remembers that. And I will guarantee you that he has circled this game on his schedule, on his calendar. In fact, he may have double circled it.
Yeah, in red pen.
This means a lot to him. So going back there, it is unique. It's a place where he led Oklahoma to a national championship. It's a school of which he finished runner-up in the Heisman Trophy. Mike Leach was the offensive coordinator that convinced him to go to Oklahoma. So everything was great about Oklahoma until he was fired in 2015. And I think he felt like he was a scapegoat. Most people would tell you that he was. But he coached a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Sam Bradford there. So it is unique. It's interesting going back to a place where he starred, led a team to a national championship. But don't make any mistake about it. I think he would rather win this game than any other game on his schedule. He won't say that. He's going to say the right things.
Yes.
It's just another game.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's a tough SEC road game. Opens up conference play. Got to go win that one. But it reminded me to the conversation you had with Cooper Mays in our part one interview with him about teams like Clemson passing up on him, or the year that went by that Georgia didn't talk to him in the recruiting process, and that it does add an edge when you go and play them like it did when they played Clemson in the Orange Bowl. I feel that same mindset has to play in for Josh Heupel and maybe even Joey Halzle, because he was the backup quarterback at one point going back to Oklahoma.
Yeah, it does. And here's the other part of that, too. I think that the Tennessee players love playing for Josh Heupel. Well, they know what this means to him. So I think there's extra motivation from the players to win this game for Josh Heupel. So I think it's going to be a heck of a game. Oklahoma's really good.
Yeah.
In the first year under Brent Venables, they had a losing record, but last year they were 10-3. They've got a young quarterback they're breaking in, but he's not nearly as highly touted as Nico Iamaleava. So, but I think Tennessee is going to come with a heck of an effort against Oklahoma.
Yeah, and speaking of Nico, he obviously has made a ton of growth, what the coaches and players will say, from his first and only start against Iowa a year ago in the Citrus Bowl to now. They say a lot of that growth is his IQ and his ability to get through, his reads and progressions. How important will that be for this 2024 team to maybe see some of that magic from 2022 translate to now? I
think it's huge. Look, in this offense, the run-pass option, the RPOs, you've got to be a quick decision maker and a good decision maker. I didn't think Joe Milton was. I don't think he fit the offense. He had some good games, but he wasn't consistent. Nico's more consistent. He's a more accurate passer. He is a more willing runner. He's a better runner in the option game that they use. I think you'll see more yards after catch from receivers because he's going to hit them in stride. I think playing against Iowa was a really good move for Tennessee to get some snaps under his belt leading into the year. I also think in preparation for the Oklahoma game, that North Carolina State game in Charlotte is big. Now, you won't have quite the animosity from the fan base. NC State won't pound him the way the Sooner fans will when he gets there with the loud noise and so forth. But I think that experience of being it's on the road, it's a neutral site, but it's still on the road. I think that'll help him get ready for going to Norman. I expect big things out of Nico this year.
And I think maybe an advantage for Nico is there's a ton of returning talent, or enough returning talent on this team. I think with ESPN analytics, it's about 52%, which is 12th in the SEC. How important is that for this team? When you got guys like Cooper Mays, Amari Thomas, Brew McCoy, all of them coming back to try and make it easier for Nico, and especially on the offensive side.
I think it's really important for him to have a good supporting cast, and I think he does. The wide receiver depth, the wide receiver room, Josh Heupel's already said it's the deepest since he's been at Tennessee. And that's saying something because in 2022 it's pretty special. Then you look at the running backs. I like Dylan Sampson a lot.
Yeah.
Cam Selden coming off an injury. I think he's got a chance to be really good. Maybe Peyton Lewis, the freshman running back, is going to be really good.
Well, they also talked a lot about Boo Carter at SEC Media Days, and maybe do you think we'll see a little bit of him in that running back room this year?
Maybe. I think right now he would be more valuable on defense.
Yeah.
But if he's an electric running back, kind of hard to pass on those, right?
Uh-huh.
So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. They don't have the depth at running back they had a year ago.
Right.
So
Well, they don't have a Jalen Wright this year.
Correct. And Jabari Small was a good back.
Yeah.
Not great, but he was a good back. So the running back, but I think they're good enough at running back. The offensive line, the starters, I think they're going to be solid.
Yeah.
I know they're still looking for that one of the guard positions.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the depth on the offensive line though.
Yeah.
They've got a few guys. They've got some names. They've got bodies.
Yeah.
And other than a Dane Davis, though, and maybe a Jackson Lampley, maybe Lampley starts. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they don't have a lot of depth on the offensive line, which means they need to stay healthy. When Cooper Mays didn't play against Florida, you could tell it affected the tempo of the offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's their backup center? If he goes out again, I think that's an issue.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have real good depth on the offensive line. There are a couple of guys they just cannot afford to lose.
Right.
And then will Javonte Spraggins be ready right away?
That's a good
He
point.
came off that MCL. It was a serious injury. He had surgery.
Yeah.
They're hoping he'll be ready right away. But how is he going to be 80%, 90%, or 100%?
Do you think John Campbell Jr. takes that next step this year?
I do. And he's moving from left tackle to right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he's a good player.
Yeah,
He did
is.
a nice job at left tackle. I think he's a solid right tackle. The left tackle, Lance Hurt coming from LSU.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't play a lot, but he was a 5-star. I expect him to be a competent player at left tackle. Spraggins at guard is healthy. Cooper Mays is an all-SEC player. I like 4 of their starters a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah.
That other spot still remains a little bit of a question mark to me.
Yeah, when we kind of maybe look at a couple of the question marks on the other side of the ball, because Cooper May says there's no question marks on the offensive line. He doesn't feel that that's where the question mark belongs. But I guess when we flip the ball to defense, obviously the other veterans that they brought was guys like Keenan Pili, who is as veteran as it comes in college football. Obviously got injured in the opener a year ago, so hasn't really played much football, but remained a captain on the sideline for this team. And I think a lot of the time, the defense is won with a linebacker unit. How important will that be for, one, Keenan Pili to kind of command the defense from that position, but also for Tennessee and Tim Banks to continue to elevate that defense?
With Keenan Pili, I think if he's healthy, I think he's going to have a monster year. I really like him.
Yeah.
The age, the ability to, he understands he's got a good football IQ. Even though he didn't play in the system last year, he saw it.
Mm-hmm.
But he cannot get hurt.
No.
He could be almost as valuable to the defense as Cooper Mays to the offense. Because he's a signal caller.
Yes, yeah.
And if you lose him, who's the next guy?
Yeah.
Jeremiah Thielander? You know, what are you going to do there? So I think he needs to have a big year. I think he'll have a big year. He's got to stay healthy. I love the depth on the defensive line.
Yeah, no, it is nice.
I think Tennessee's defensive line and their depth stacks up with just about anybody in the SEC.
Yeah, Amari Thomas was talking about how one of their main goals is to create more turnovers this season. You know, how fun will that brand of football be when you know that that's their top goal?
Well, they're an aggressive defense. They're an attacking defense. They play upfield. That's what they want to do. They led they were in the top 4 in the SEC in sacks last year. They were in the top 4 in the SEC in tackles for loss last year. Those are 2 important categories. And by the way, the defense is also in the top 4 in points allowed, total defense, and run defense.
Yeah.
If they can match those numbers, this should be a solid defense. I think the defense was a little bit underrated last year, even though I did not like the secondary.
Yes. Well, you
wasn't a
mentioned
fan
it.
of that group.
Yeah, I'll just read a couple of stats from a year ago, especially when you're talking about the offensive line. So their rush yards that they would give up per game was 114, which ranked 20th in the FBS. Do we see similar production to that this year?
Yes, on that defensive line. And it's because not only are the starters quality starters, and you got a couple of NFL players, you got quality depth.
Yeah.
There's depth and there's quality depth. The offensive line has some depth. It's not quality. They got bodies.
Yeah.
But the defensive line has proven players. So I think the rushing total will be very similar. I think, and one thing that could help them is that typically with Tennessee's style of play and their offense, they get a lead.
Yeah.
And sometimes they force the other team to play comeback, and which forces them to throw the football. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
But I do think the defensive line is stout, and I think one of the few teams they didn't really stop running the football last year was Missouri.
Yeah.
That was an outlier.
Yeah.
I mean, Cody Schrader ran for over 200 yards. But they were really good, for the most part, against most everybody else they played.
Sure.
I think their defensive numbers will be really good. The run defense will be really good. And I think the sack total will also be very good.
Yeah. A couple of lighter notes as we wrap this up. So, did you see Cooper Mays was wearing a cowboy hat in Dallas the other day?
Cowboy hat and some pretty nasty boots.
Oh, I didn't see the boots.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so were the boots or the hat with the Power T branded on it cooler?
I would go with a hat because that was more noticeable.
Sure.
But he was bouncing around, and there was some cowboy boots. I wonder if he got them from Jason Witten.
Yeah, I wonder.
I don't know. Witten played there
Where
for
did you get
17
this?
years,
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, he was playing up the cowboy aspect. He wouldn't have worn that in Nashville
Oh, absolutely.
or Atlanta
not.
or Birmingham.
No.
But in Dallas,
Hey, that's the time to pull it out.
that's right. And
Yeah,
he did.
because those players, I mean, they take a lot of pride in being the best dressed one of the
Yes.
team, that players that get to go and then across the board. And I think this year, maybe in years past, Cooper didn't take it away, but I definitely think Cooper was definitely the best dressed of the group this year.
Oh yeah, he was. And you know, when we interviewed him, and he was kind of like so low key.
Very low key.
I did not expect him to come out with the cowboy hats and the boots looking like that. But good for him. That was
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, you can just tell the vibe is very different, especially in that veteran group this year
Yes.
and last year's. And something that you were also able to talk to during the spring meetings was about certain penalties that may or may not happen. Obviously, that topic coming back up again in the SEC Media Days, and it's the horns down logo or the horns down gesture.
Yes.
It's not going to be a penalty if it's not taunting, but how do you decide if it's taunting or not?
Well, I talked to John McDade. He's a supervisor of SEC officials. I visited with him at the SEC spring meetings, and he said that it'll be treated like the Gator Chomp. So if you're doing horns down among your teammates, if you're doing it on the sideline, that's okay. But if you go up to a Texas player, let's say you've just sacked their quarterback, and you do the horns down to him, 15 yards, that's a penalty because that's taunting.
See, I think that's so weak. I think that makes football so exciting. It's even like the celebrations in the end zone after a touchdown. Like a sack or a touchdown, those don't come around too often where, you know, it might be a little too much, but I find it a little weak that you can't do a horns down gesture in the face of a player.
Well, you can't do the Gator Chomp either.
I still think that's weak. I like
Okay.
that. Even the celebrations
I
in
don't.
the end zone, you don't.
No, because here's what you're doing. You're amping up anger in the opponent, which could lead to a fight.
But it's all a mental game, is it? Well, if anything could lead to a fight, I feel like.
Well, if you taunt somebody,
Yeah.
I mean, as a player myself, if somebody did that to me, I want to punch him.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm competitive.
Yeah.
And I played a lot of sports.
Yeah.
Don't pull that.
Then don't get
stuff
beat.
Well, no, it's not just about that. I mean, if I'm playing somebody in golf, I remember years
Sure.
ago I was playing in a match play against somebody, and I had a crick in my neck, and I bogeyed the first few holes, and he turns to this other guy, and he said, "I wonder who I play next."
Oh.
That's all I needed for my neck to feel better.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure.
I closed him out 3-2. So
Look at you go.
there's no, to me, I don't like taunting.
You think it gets
You
a little
do,
dirty?
I don't.
Yeah.
Well, it's just unsportsmanlike.
Okay.
And again, to me, it can lead to fist fights. It can lead
Sure.
to clearing of a bench. It can lead to
Emotions
those
are
things.
high, yeah.
Look, that's all right. They are high. So if you want to sack somebody, go back into your huddle
Yes.
and do it. But I'm not a fan. Like, I had trouble sometimes with the 2022 Tennessee baseball team
Oh, everybody did.
with some of that. I mean, you don't hit a home run and go around the bases.
Why do you
flipping
think
people
celebrations
off.
have to be in the dugouts now?
That's where they should be.
Yeah.
So, but don't flip the bird and do those things or throw a bat
Do you
flip
think if they
28
do a
feet in the
horns
air.
down as a touchdown celebration, that could be excessive celebration?
As long as it's not aimed at a Texas player,
Okay.
you should be okay.
Okay. I
See,
keep it in
I'm more
mind.
old school.
Yeah.
You're new breed about anything goes,
Yeah.
and I'm not, because I know what it feels like
Sure.
when somebody does
Yeah,
that
it's not
to
nice
me.
to be on the receiving end, for
No,
sure. But I
so-
guess if it goes both ways.
Yeah, but it amps it up. I mean,
It does.
I'm not a big
I feel
fan
like that's how
of that. So-
rivalries stay nice and alive when you have
Well,
moments
and
like
look at the
that.
Egg Bowl. You had some taunting going on in the Egg Bowl a few years ago, and the bench is cleared and they have this brawl on the field.
Yeah, you don't want that.
No, but that's what that
Or
leads
even the
to.
confusion that happened in Tennessee and Florida a year ago in Gainesville, just that weird scuffle at the end of the game. Anything I think could get tensions to rise, and I guess you don't want to add to it, but
that's
sometimes I think it's part of the fun in the game and keeps it exciting. But I think if you can do it away from the face of the player, then I guess, you take your wins where you can find them. But just kind of just with the vibe of college football right now and just how Tennessee football players are looking, I just think the cool, relaxed vibe that they had in Dallas for the SEC Media Days, obviously talking to Cooper the other week, I just think there's like a cool sense of like confidence and composure within this team heading into 24.
I agree. And I think I'm not a big fan of saying a bowl game necessarily carries momentum.
Sure.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I think in this case it does because you played a quarterback who made his first start. He played very well. They beat Iowa 35-0, and Iowa was a 10-win Big Ten team.
Had a great defense.
And I think they're excited about what Nico brings to the table. I think they're excited about what they have on defense. Some of the new skill position players that they have from the transfer portal or a freshman receiver that's coming in, Matthews. I think they feel really good about what they can do this year. The one thing they've got to avoid is having one of those road game fallouts. They've had a couple of them. South Carolina 2 years ago.
Don't lose games you're not supposed to.
Yeah, and even like Missouri was a good team, but you laid an egg.
Yes.
And you can't do that. You got to avoid that. I'll tell you one place they won't lay an egg is Oklahoma.
Oh, they better not.
No, they won't. They may not win the game, but they won't lay an egg.
They'll get up for that one for sure. Yeah.
So they got to be careful about not going on the road against an Arkansas or even a neutral site against NC State.
Yep.
Make sure you take care of business on the road. Doesn't mean you have to go unbeaten on the road, but I mean those losses to South Carolina and Missouri were one-sided, lopsided, where they didn't even show up.
Out of character losses. Yes.
You cannot do that.
No.
And so, but I've got Tennessee at 9-3. I've got them right on the cusp of the college football playoff. If they get to 10-2, they're in my opinion.
Yes.
Schedule would dictate
There's no limit
that.
on how many teams from a conference can make it in the top 12. So
That's correct.
Right. So 10-2 could be good enough.
And I think anybody in the SEC that goes 10-2 makes it. So if Tennessee can get to 10-2, I think they will be in the college football playoff. And, well, I don't know about. I was going to say hosting a game. They might.
Yeah,
If they can get one of those
goes,
5 to 8 seeds at 10-2, that's possible. But wouldn't that be a magnetic situation to see a home playoff game at Neyland Stadium in December? My goodness.
If we saw how the fans were reacting to Tennessee baseball being successful, I can only imagine when Tennessee football gets to that threshold. But, good talking to you about SEC Media Days. And it's the end of this calm July month now that we're getting into August here soon. And then crazy time on Rocky Top for college football.
And Steve Spurrier said the talking season, it's over pretty much. Yeah, we got football practice coming up here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, pads are coming on soon.
And this is kind of, as you said, the unofficial kickoff to college football.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
Yep, me too. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.